Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
All right, we're ready.
Hi. This is the July 14th meeting of the Isle of Palms Environmental Advisory Committee. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that the press and the public have been duly noted of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. Approval of previous meetings minutes. Does anyone have any changes or additions to the
I
minutes?
move the minutes be approved as written.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right, and unless we have citizens' comments, we will move on to old business. First, wildlife. We're considering the ordinance prohibiting digging holes above the mean high water on the beach. And
Yeah.
we'd like to,
Yeah, give a
John
quick-
or Douglas, give us an update.
I'll
on
give you a
that.
quick update. So this came out of this group primarily with an ordinance that mirrored others by Hilton Head, and I think Hilton Head is really the one that closest matched ours. In that ordinance, there was a specific prohibition dealing with the material being a metal shovel. There was also a reference to the size and the depth of the hole being 6 inches. That recommendation went to the Public Works Committee of City Council. They deliberated a little bit at that level, and they felt like the material wasn't really the problem. And I think folks kind of acknowledged that it was really the hole that was a problem, not the material. Also, the example of a 6-inch hole, the group kind of made reference to there are a lot of 6-inch deep holes that are not problematic. So that also kind of struck a chord as being potentially unnecessary. So we've gone back and revised the ordinance. We talked about it at our last meeting, and we've been revised to primarily and really kind of only prohibit holes being above the mean high tide line. The requirement would be that you should fill in your hole when you leave, before you leave.
Oh my God.
But really, it just says it should be below high tide. The thought at the last meeting was that when they're below high tide, as soon as the tide comes in, if somebody were to ignore the requirement that it be filled back in, the surf itself would fill in the hole and not make it a dangerous part of the beach. So that's the draft that's before you. I did circulate it with some members of the Public Works Committee to just see if they felt like it met kind of their expectations for being a reasonable approach at the issue. They seem to think that it was. Just as a slight aside, as you all probably know, the committee structure at City Council is different, at least for 6 months or so. So this group has been interacting really with Public Works specifically. That changed this month, and they have a workshop situation where all committees are meeting together in one workshop format. So they had their first workshop this past Tuesday. This issue was on their agenda. I just gave a brief overview that you all were working on it, and for them to expect a recommendation. So that's kind of where we are.
I would like to say something about the wording of the
Sure.
ordinance. With DNR, they don't use things like behind or above or below the high tide line. A better terminology might be landward or seaward of
Yep.
the high tide line.
Excellent point.
And I have just passed around a hole that we found this morning that looks like a bomb crater.
Is that it?
Right.
That's today.
Can you believe that?
That's
That was at Ocean Club Villas in Wild Dunes. And it looks like a meteorite hit the beach. Now, that might be a little bit, the people are often back in the distance, but that's what we're dealing with almost on a daily basis. I got 2 calls from my volunteers about big holes this morning. That was one of them.
Wow.
Yesterday, there There was one day down south of the pier, there were 4 big holes dug. I mean, it really is. You were
Wow.
asking me how frequent
Yeah.
it is, and I'm almost embarrassed to call the police dispatcher every single day and tell them where the big holes are, because they don't always have beach services officers that
Right.
can go out and fill them up. But we would be so happy to have something done about those.
We-
And I'm wondering, John, or could you take that picture to the workshop and show them what we're dealing with?
Well, the thought is that you come out, and correct me if I'm wrong, Douglas, but our thought is we come out as meeting and take the proposal to council.
Yeah, I just want a council to see the
You see the.
the picture.
So Mary, this is seaward of the high tide line. Is that correct?
That's what they're proposing.
No, the
but this hole-
that particular hole was not above the high tide line,
I don't know.
correct?
That sand looks pretty soft. to
Yeah, I mean, you
me.
can see
don't
all,
think-
but it looks like, to me, it's
I
right
think
on the
that would
line.
be an illegal hole,
Yeah.
probably because of the way the sand looks. The water didn't come over that sand last night. And
You have to fill it. You have to fill
Well,
those in before you run
the
it.
tide will fill the holes in.
But it
I
also
think.
says that whoever dug the hole, filled the hole before.
Mhm. That would be ideal.
Or within 30 minutes of sunset.
Yeah, because it's a sunset. When you leave on 30 to sunset, and the thought is that if that doesn't happen for something, I can take care of it.
Mhm.
Still a requirement to dig a hole, fill it.
Yeah, and
And
I don't,
that's
So
the
what point
kind
would
of
a
hole
citation
that,
happen?
I think, I mean,
say that again.
I'm just wondering, at what point would a citation happen? Would it be because it's landward of the high tide line, or because it hasn't been filled in?
Either
both?
or. I-
But it's obviously it's hard to enforce a hole that's like. Left, you don't know.
Right.
But there would be a fine associated. There's also they walking off. I think there's also some probably reminders that the beach service officers can do if they see somebody digging a hole. Hey, remember to fill that in. And move on or something. But as long as there's an ordinance in place, they can help try to enforce. it.
Yeah, procedurally, we've talked about the fact that right now, there's not anything in the code. So that this would at least give the beach services officers something to refer to of,
Mhm.
you know, hey, you have to fill that in.
But there's no
And
size.
Say again,
There's no size.
there is not a size.
that's what I mean, I was a little bit of a dissenting voice, I think, last meeting saying taking out the shovel, taking out the size. I mean, I personally think this has been, I know we're trying to get something, we talked about strategy. Let's get something in place, see how it does, and then we
Right.
can always add to it. But that is so egregious. I mean, does anyone really need anything like that on the beach? I mean,
Certainly don't, I'm sure, with a metal shovel.
Yeah.
We also noticed, we were in Hilton Head. And they clearly have done a pretty significant just information campaign. Signs at, I think, pretty much every major beach access saying fill in your holes. So I think the city would see this as, Doug, as you've said, kind of a initial strategy that we get the word out. We let the beach service officers know it's a prohibition to leave it. Prohibition to do it at all, landward of the line. And just see, you know, if the signs, the information and the ordinance aren't enough, and we're still having this happen. Once we've taken those steps, then, you know, I think we would be in a strong position to do something more. Quite honestly, we initially, in this draft, we had a cubic foot requirement. I think we chose 10 cubic feet. But then, you know, it was one of those things of, I can kind of wrap my head around 10 cubic feet. I don't know that somebody on the beach that doesn't deal in dimensions that much would, or a beach service officer. So
Sure.
it kind of, no matter how you split it, it seemed that, you know, and maybe there could be a more nebulous term, a large, you know, prohibition of a large crater. But again, that kind of leaves up to the discretion of the people. So
Actually, I have a similar question about the general comprehension of where the tide line is. I don't know if all the visitors or even I assume most people who live on the beach know that, but
The
landward
average, yeah.
or seaward of the high tide line might not resonate with lots of visitors at the very least.
And I think, to me, it would be kind of and I don't know that any of us anticipate a lot of tickets being given for, people out on the beach. I think it's more, to me, I see it more as an information campaign and giving the beach services officers the tools to say, hey, that area is a problem. They would have to be, if they don't already know the high tide line, kind of trained of, that is a problem, but right here would be an acceptable place, but just be sure you fill it in. So I think it's. I
It's
think
like the lighting ordinance. I don't think it has ever been given a
a
ticket.
ticket, right?
But we use it all the time. We have it printed and we hand it to people and we call the police and show it to the police so
Yeah.
they'll know what they're talking about if they have to visit the house.
Right.
And it's very helpful just to have the ordinance on the books.
Would the public information campaign be focused on filling your holes then, and not so much focused on the tide line?
I
part?
think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. to me.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
that
that's a
would be the
good-
primary.
That could be a fun little campaign. You could
That-
fill in your holes.
That is exactly what the Hilton Head
Right.
campaign was, just filling your holes.
It's like, what-
Problem with signage is that we've got so many signs.
Well,
yeah.
People don't want to add any more signs to the
mean-
paths and that's going to be difficult to put up.
Amy gets twitchy with the sign.
Yeah, I know.
She's the one that,
Educational
It
campaign.
is a
would be good.
problem.
You're gonna have behavior, I sent that thing around, people's behavior, human behavior is gonna vary. You're gonna have people who are gonna comply. People won't dig holes. There'll be people who dig holes that'll comply, and there's people that are gonna do whatever they want to do. I was jogging on the beach the other day and then a guy lit up a cigarette and I stopped and said, did you know this was a non-smoking beach? He goes, yes, so.
What are you going to do about it?
You know, I wish I was authorized to write tickets. So I wrote him a ticket.
yeah, citizens arrest.
Can we get authorized?
Deputized.
We get, you want to,
Yeah.
can we be authorized to do tickets?
Talk to Chief Cornette about that.
Yeah, but it was just, but the point is, we do the best we can. We do an informational campaign, make it fun if we can. Signage. I think you're right about signage. We have to be careful on signage. And hopefully, the people who egregiously just agree not to do it, we can maybe give out a couple of tickets and let it circulate around that it's it's something that, they're very concerned about. And you should, think twice about leaving a huge hole like that,
Yeah.
or digging a big hole like that. You're never going to be able to regulate human behavior, but we do the best we can.
Do you think that was for multiple days of use?
No,
they do
'cause
that?
my volunteers tell me every day that, how long it took to dig.
Well,
that
no,
hole.
did one family dig that, planning to kind of come back throughout the,
I don't know.
So
They-
I've seen families where the kids are using like a hot tub. That's basically the idea.
Yeah,
So,
That
and
just
it's
seems
kind of a thing with beach gatherings where people dig these big holes and then everybody sits around it and they kind of
Or
almost
like a
make a
bench.
chair
like a.
around the hole and they all sit around the hole and even
So that's
someone
what
re-
that
yeah,
arm is behind,
Yeah.
that's a backrest.
right. And then someone mentioned to me, a friend of mine mentioned to me that they had been to Sullivan's Island and they actually had like a bonfire in the middle of the
they give permits for
right.
bonfires.
And there
But
was
they're
a,
very strict about people have to stop it by 10 o'clock and
Right,
clear
right.
out all the
Yeah.
ashes.
but they had that sort of arrangement like you're
Mhm.
seeing there for the bonfire.
I'm just glad we don't have them on the Isle of Palms. Please don't let the fire department ever do that.
Well, and it was supervised by a public safety officer from Sullivan's Island. So there was someone
They
there,
have rules.
but I don't know what happened to the hole after it was over.
I didn't get a report about it this morning and we covered the whole beach.
Oh, this was about a
Oh.
week ago.
And I think
It's a
that,
tough issue.
I think the case was also made, and it may have been at the Public Works Committee, that when you get below the high tide line, the sand is not as kind of malleable or form. It doesn't keep its form as well as the kind of dry sand. So I wonder if you
They
could,
hit one.
if you could even kind of create that down in the soupier sand. I think you could do the hot tub, and obviously they're down kind of at a point where it's getting full of water. So, but I would also guess that fills itself in pretty quickly.
What terrified us was this hole was near where a turtle did
Mm.
come up. and nest last night, and that hole was right
Right
there.
there.
In Florida, it's been documented of loggerhead falling into a hole like that, breaking its neck and
Oh
dying.
my God.
Not to mention people having sand fall in on them and suffocating and dying from holes on the beach.
Did, I think between your last meeting and this meeting, there was an article in the Post and Courier. Mary, you did an excellent job of kind of explaining the benefits and that other folks are doing. And I felt like the article was,
Yeah, I was glad they did that.
yeah, it was very balanced, kind of, this is what people
Yeah.
are doing.
It
This
wasn't
is,
making fun of us.
it wasn't making fun of us and killing the fun of the sandcastle builder. So I think that was good.
Yeah.
So kind of to Belvin's point, would it make sense, Mary, to do away with the tide line and just say, fill in your holes?
Well, if it's useful for enforcement, like if it's useful for the officers to have it on hand to be able to say, and we don't even have to make that too much of a public thing. It makes sense to keep that in the ordinance, in my
Yeah,
view.
yeah.
Even if it's a little confusing to your layperson.
Yeah,
It might help create more holes in the intertidal area, which would be good.
Hmm.
To, to have that in there. The
Okay.
people might think about it if they're even aware of the
Yeah.
rule. Yeah, I don't know.
Are we good staying silent on the size? We, like I said, we kind of internally messed with cubic feet. Mess with inserting the word big or large. At the end of the day, we just felt like, it was just kind of problematic. I guess it just created an immediate target for attack. If you put a cubic size, you put a word like large. So we
If we
just
do-
felt like it got to the same point without it.
If we don't put a size in, does that also open us to ridicule when people say, oh, my kid built the hole this big? But that's also part of the regulation. Like, is my 5-year-old in danger of getting? I mean,
Have
no,
to
they
fill
wouldn't
it
be.
in.
Right. I presume the police aren't going to bother a 5-year-old kid who dug a little hole, right? A little
And
hole.
they,
'cause we're
and
saying
they
little,
leave it without filling it in.
Right.
Yeah.
But by not saying it, does that also open us to ridicule
I mean,
for small holes?
small holes are relevant for like a people's safety
Mhm.
standpoint. I mean, my mom tells me not to run the beach at night because who knows what you'll
Yeah.
get caught and you'll break your ankle.
Yeah.
So I mean, having it on the books, like just please fill them in.
Fill it
Even
in,
if
even if
they're
it's
small.
small.
I think it makes sense. to me.
Yeah.
To reiterate what a lot of people have said, just because I don't want to go without speaking. The real benefit of this is to get this ordinance on the books and to again support it as a committee, showing that we're trying to be leaders in environmental issues. So whether or not there's going to be a ticket or a challenge by a patrol vehicle is almost not the point. I think the point is, this is an important issue that we shouldn't, as a committee, ignore and recommend to the council that they push forward and get something on the books.
Yeah, I
That's a
think
good
it's
start.
something you can say that if you dig a hole, fill it. It's easier to get to the council, start putting inside the hole, everybody's got a different opinion around what's big, what's small. And then next thing you know, it's back.
And the easier it is to get around loopholes when you put specificity to something like this.
So I think this is a good chance to get it.
And you're also saying that it can be amended, the ordinance can be amended in the future if we find that it needs more teeth. And
Absolutely.
because I was a little disappointed and felt like it was watered down, but I understand how we need to get something that'll pass and try it.
And Mary, this group, I guess I wouldn't have known the number of holes or kind of the frequency, the depth, the severity of the issue, but kind of instantly, right? Pretty
Every
much
morning
every
at 6
morning,
o'clock.
the number and the size. And so I think it's something that once it's on our radar to that extent, we can definitely monitor it and adjust and see if the word gets back that they're happening at the same frequency in the same areas, we could maybe adjust with the public safety officers, just kind of keep an active eye on it. See if it changes, if we're moving the needle if there needs to be an adjustment in the code, I think we make that adjustment after we've seen how it goes.
Sounds good.
I have a question just for clarification where it says, are we gonna leave the term mean high water line? Is that? What did we decide about that?
I think landward.
Landward of the.
Yeah, we're
mean
gonna
high
add the
water?
word
Okay,
landward.
just landward, okay.
Any digging landward of the mean high water line is prohibited.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good. So what do we?
I like that.
All right. I have a few more wildlife updates, if I
So-
may, briefly,
Do we need
Yeah.
to take an action? on it?
Yeah, so
or we,
this
Are we
group,
voting on
if you're happy with it, you all would make a motion to recommend the city council approve as amended.
So moved.
Second,
all right, Jonathan seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mary, you want to stay with wildlife? for a
Yeah,
minute?
can I just give a
Sure.
few brief wildlife updates? First one is about, as we all know, the leaf tern colony. All the poles and signs and wooden shade devices have been removed from the leaf tern colony between 48th and 51st Avenue, we're glad to say. And the beach is very clean. They picked up everything yesterday. More than 20 young leaf terns have fledged. And now they're getting flying lessons and fishing lessons from their parents in preparation for their migration down to South America, which is really a good thing. And we have the Isle of Palms community who cooperated, and especially the volunteers from DNR and Audubon to thank for this really good success, I'm happy to say.
That's the first time
It's the
that's happened to
first
that
time
extent?
it's been that good.
That's
Usually,
fantastic.
I remember in past years, we haven't realized there were least terns on the beach trying to nest early enough to keep them from being destroyed.
Yeah.
And if they keep having nest failure over and over, by July, they'll give up
Mm,
and won't even reproduce that
That's
year.
fantastic. Very
So
exciting.
this year we got it in time, and only problem that happened was on July 2nd. I was terrified to see that the whole colony was this deep in water. We had that torrential
Yep,
rain.
yep.
And I thought, oh my goodness, but these little guys were mobile enough to crawl up onto high ground and save themselves.
Wow.
There were a few pairs of least terns that were re-nesting after failing in other parts outside of the ropes. And I think their colony, their eggs failed
Oh,
or their chicks died, but the majority of them were old enough. And I doubt if those will try again because it's so late. So, but it was a good success.
and the fourth was okay. I know there was concern about the traffic out
Uh-huh.
there on the fourth. Did that get-
The Audubon shorebird stewards and a few turtle team members all got together and kept control of the people, kept them from running through there. And
Yeah.
of course, there were fireworks, but I don't think any harm was done.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the coyotes you're concerned about?
That's coming up.
Okay.
Okay.
Mary, I just want to say, so just to put it in perspective, that 20 may not sound like a lot, but was it just 4 or 5 years ago? We only had one, and it was the first one we were aware of.
Yeah.
Right, so.
And
That's
they were
impressive.
nesting on the rooftops, and that was a failure because red-tailed hawks and other flying predators would just come and pick them off.
Yeah.
And
But there was a single
this
nest.
was
just out
natural
on
in the
Yeah.
way it
beach,
should have
and that
been.
was
That's
it.
fantastic.
Yeah, so hallelujah.
And so is the expectation that they would come back next year? we
Well,
don't
we
know.
don't know where they're gonna come back. I rely on my people on Turtle Patrol to tell me where you are when a little bird comes up and starts dive bombing and attacking you, because that's
That's
where,
what they're doing.
and,
Mhm.
Wow.
and the Audubon people just did a great job
That's great.
of having people out there to educate them every day in the hot sun. Really amazing what
Beautiful
they
thing.
did. Yeah, yeah.
It's really a beautiful thing.
But moving on to not such good things. As of this morning, the turtle team has 47 loggerhead nests, and 35 of these are on the Isle of Palms with 12 on Sullivan's. And today's Wild Dunes nest was the 6th one to be dug up and mostly destroyed by coyotes. The coyotes patrolled the beach all night, running up and down, waiting for turtles to come up. And now the ones, just the pack in Wild Dunes, they're the only ones that know to dig up the nest or to look for the turtles. But they're really gotten 6 nests, and usually they don't destroy as many as they destroyed last night. Last night, out of 61 eggs, only 3 were left, and there were shells all over the beach. Very sad. But it just, that's the way it is, and we're having to live with it. If we can get out there and find the nest before the coyotes do, we can put a screen over it and move it out of that section, and it's fine. And that's happened quite a few times as well.
So these were just not found, the ones that the
Well-
6 that have been until it was too late, I guess.
They were found, well, DNR calls it first night predation.
Yeah.
It's when the coyotes see a turtle coming up, and we can't stay
Yeah.
out all
So it
night.
happens.
And we
that
don't know
night.
where and when the turtles are going to come up. So the coyotes are out foxing us on
Yeah.
that.
Oh my God.
What section of Wild Dunes?
Well, from the property owner's beach house. Well, no, we've had some at the other condos, just from, yeah, from the property owner's beach house up into Dewey's Inlet. Just the top part of Wild Dunes. So we document all these losses, and that's the way it is. And the other thing was, an unusual thing happened on July the 2nd for the Isle of Palms. We had mass stranding of birds called great shearwaters. And these are pelagic or ocean living birds that they nest down in South Atlantic. And we found 9 on the Isle of Palms, and only 2 of them were alive. Most of them washed up dead. The 2 that we found, along with one that we got a call from on Sullivan's Island that the firemen had, were taken to the Avian Conservation Center in Awendaw, and where there 22 others were admitted from our local beaches. And they had various degrees of emaciation. I had 5 of them at my house, and I could feel the breastbone. Some of them were starving, some of them weren't. But none of the ones that were taken for treatment survived. And carcasses were sent to a research facility in Georgia, where Debbie used to send birds when she was medical director up there. What's the name of that place?
Southeastern Wildlife Disease Study Lab. It's affiliated with University of Georgia. And we had an incident like this a few years ago. We sent over 50 shearwaters to this lab. And they even distributed the carcasses to other labs around the country because they couldn't find anything, just wanting different eyes. And basically they found nothing.
But they did test them for avian influenza, which is going
So,
around
I
killing
don't know.
eagles.
It's
They were
just-
all negative for avian influenza, but that's all we
Yeah.
know.
But I mean, these birds migrate like 40,000 miles. It's crazy, and without stopping. So a lot of them just don't make it.
And most of these were young ones making their first migration. So maybe their
Yeah.
theories, if they get in a current in the Atlantic, all the middle of the Atlantic where there are no fish, they starve to death. So it might have just been that, but it was
No, it's
always-
hard to know.
always
This is-
unsettling.
yeah, This is something that's been going on for a long time, and I'm sure there's a reason. We just don't know what it is
Yeah.
yet.
just thought it was worth
Yeah.
That
telling
is interesting.
people about. Yeah. So that's all I have. Anything else about wild?
We haven't really talked about it, but I'd like to talk about the coyote population on the island. I know it's not a popular subject, but I just wanted to see what conversations have been had about, kind of following the science on controlling these animals. So, for example, I worked with the red wolves in the wild. And so one thing they did, because there were so few red wolves, they would often pair with a coyote. And what they learned was, and Dewey's actually practices this, if they did a vasectomy and a tubal ligation, so the animals would still cycle and still protect their territory, but they just couldn't produce anymore. And so they would trap them and, perform this surgery and turn them back out. And the idea being at least their territory, which is quite large, prevents any others from coming in. And then eventually, since we're just dealing with coyotes here, not looking to preserve them necessarily, that might be a good long-term solution. The problem is trapping on an island is a problem, because it might trap other animals that aren't intended.
So once they thin back out, they're not just backfilled by new coyotes?
It would take a long time. They could live 7 to 10 years
Mm.
and easily in the wild.
It's interesting that the only pack of coyotes on the island that are aware of turtle eggs are the ones that are up at Dewey's Inlet. I blame
Yeah.
Judy Fairchild at
Yeah.
Dewey's because they've had this problem for years. And I said, one of your coyotes came over here and taught ours how to do it. But the other coyotes on the island haven't been a problem. That doesn't mean they won't
They'll learn.
learn to do
They'll
this.
learn.
So I don't know.
I'm
I
not
don't
an
know.
expert. My understanding is that other communities and cities have tried to declare war on their coyote populations to
It's a
no
bad
real
idea.
effect.
Yeah, no,
Doesn't
they
really
only,
help.
they're not like wolves. If you just start, obliterating them, they go into basically mass production. Everybody starts breeding in a pack.
Right.
The social system only, the alpha pair breeds. But if you take out one of the alphas, everybody all the females go into heat. It's just feel a need to mass produce. So yeah, just removing them.
Do you know if, so this is my kind of limited perspective. I felt like this topic got a lot of attention several years ago, and there was kind of this back and forth as to do you let them do you try to live with them, or do you start trying to declare mass war on them? Do you know if this idea of what you've described as a management tool was even in the discussions back then? I don't
don't
remember
know.
it.
I don't know.
I
doubt
remember
it.
getting up and speaking at the rec center at that meeting and saying, we can't just kill them all because
Yeah.
Yeah,
it would create more.
Yeah,
I kind of thought
And
there was
people
two
were
paths, either
really on
kill
the
them all or
warpath.
let them,
yeah,
or try to,
And that
trap
just
'em.
brings in more.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
a
If you
tough,
take out the wrong ones, you're creating a worse problem.
And the method that you've described just doesn't do that. It doesn't create that problem. So-
Right, because they're still cycling, and that's
Yeah.
why you don't castrate them, you do a vasectomy and tubal ligation, so the female still cycles. They don't know.
And yeah, I guess you have to trap them though, obviously, to do that.
That's, yeah.
Maybe a question if any other town or city has pursued that, something to look
Dewey's.
into. Dewey's, okay.
Mhm.
They're doing, that's the way
Oh,
they're,
no, I'm sorry. They're not doing the sterilization. No, they're just living with the coyotes and letting the coyotes control,
Their territory.
not letting anybody else in.
DNR doesn't do anything about this. They're not involved in this problem in any capacity that you're aware of, or
Not that I know of.
I know they do give bounties in the rest of the state for
Yeah,
killing coyotes, but I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, that wouldn't work
Yeah.
here.
And it's a tough argument because technically coyotes are not native. They're here because we eliminated red wolves. And, that's what kept the coyotes on their side. And
Can
we took them
reintroduce-
away.
Could we reintroduce Red Wolf?
No,
That's
we
a
need
great idea.
donkeys.
People wouldn't
Farm-
like that either. Yeah.
But farms use donkeys to control coyotes.
Yeah.
We can take that in a lot of different directions.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know. There's not a good answer. It's not a simple answer by any means. But it's just
No, it's
something that I
it's
think
It's a
we
complex.
should be discussing.
And I mean, coming from up north, we had, deer populations,
Mhm.
Well, the good thing is the sea turtle population is rebounding so successfully that I hate to say it, but we can afford to lose a few eggs, even though it's painful when it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just nature.
Can't.
So Deb, if we were to endorse that policy,
Mhm.
would the challenge be trapping them for, so I guess I think
Yeah.
right now that we are kind of half-heartedly trying to trap at a few key locations.
Mhm.
I think when they're trapped, they're taken away.
Yeah,
Yeah, they have to be.
And so this would be different in that instead of taking away, we would take them, have them sterilized and bring them back.
Yep.
Would that be, is that from a scientific perspective?
yes,
Advantageous to getting rid of them? Because you're actually bringing them back and they're taking
It's-
back their territory?
a way of controlling them, not getting rid
Where
of them.
by us removing them entirely, it's leaving. a
Right,
vacuum
somebody
for
else is just,
somebody else.
anytime you create a hole, somebody else is just gonna fill it. That's just the way it is with any species.
Do we trap enough to make a difference, do you think?
I have no idea,
I know.
because
I have
all I've read is we do.
I have
something. I don't know
experience with
what's really
one
going
pack on the Isle of Palms. We had a lot of turtle nests right at 23rd Avenue and I knew where that den was. And somebody hired a private trapper, one of the residents there. And he was a country boy and he used Campbell's chicken noodle soup and put it in I think he used to have a heart trap. It wasn't a leg trap or anything. And he would catch a coyote every night. And now that pack is gone.
Got
I've
rid of-
only seen one coyote there. But I'm sure it's just a matter
Yeah.
of time for more
Yeah.
to come.
It's a never ending management program once you start.
It is, and I mean, we have to have a
Yeah.
predator, and so my thinking is, we got rid of wolves, get rid of coyotes. What's next
What's
on the
next?
intelligence scale? Rats and raccoons. I
Rats.
mean, do we want to be overrun with them? Because that's what we're talking about, you know?
Maybe not.
Um,
Yeah, maybe they're winning. Maybe the rats are winning.
and coyotes are
Rats
great
are-
ratters, and they kill snakes as well, so.
So do we want to put this on a future agenda or?
I don't know. I just wanted to discuss it. Because it is something that's talked about a lot in the community. And I would just like to have it out there that there is a better way than just trying to
Do we have a,
eliminate
do
them.
we have a hotline? Do we have like a coyote spotting hotline or something like that?
Yeah, they're reported
They are
to the
reported.
city.
Yeah.
Sightings are reported
Well,
here
for-
in Sullivan's.
For next month, how about I just get, because I know the data is kept, it's reported.
Mm,
We'll just kind of keep it on the agenda.
Yeah.
We'll look at the
That's where I was
data.
going with that, is if we could maybe, if we start collecting data, maybe it's, right now, it's an observation.
It's being
Yeah.
collected.
And
Yeah.
observe it. and
Yeah,
like we're-
because,
like,
yeah,
we're gonna look at litter once or twice a year. Let's. look at
right,
coyotes
because I don't
there
know
once a year.
who's doing the
I know.
trapping or killing or what, what the numbers are.
Deb, was there any particular person who performed those procedures?
This was in North Carolina, but any veterinarian can do it.
Okay.
Maybe we better move on to litter. We want to talk about Fisher recycling.
All right, we'll put it on the notes to keep this on next month's agenda, provide data on what we're doing so far and kind of how many we're getting and where and that, whatever we have, we'll
Alright.
provide it and just give it some thought between this
Do
month.
you
and-
have access to that data?
Yes,
Okay.
it's kept by police chief,
Okay,
so I'll get that and
all right, that'd be great.
report it out.
That's a good
Thank you.
starting point.
So the Fisher recycling proposal, this is something that we heard from Mrs. Fisher last month. We didn't think she gave a great proposal about, and I can't, Sandy and Belvin may have, you were here?
No,
You
but
were
I
not.
did see it on the,
Okay,
I was
on the
absent.
YouTube.
but I think you're well aware of what she's probably doing and so I think the proposal for consideration at this point is 2 locations, strategically placed bins in 2 locations. They would pick up those locations. I think it's either twice a week or it's once a week, 2 locations. $9,600 for that service. It's been mentioned that we probably could receive offsetting grants to pay the $9,600. But before, the way the process would work is we would wait for a recommendation from you all. If you think it's something worthwhile and viable, you all would make a recommendation to city council. This is another point that I gave a briefing on.
I'm sorry, I don't have the minutes in front of me. And so I'm relying on my memory, but I thought we had made a recommendation.
We
Did
didn't,
Not,
no, we
Okay.
heard from her.
We postponed it, so we had some time to think
Yeah.
about it.
okay,
'Cause
well,
I-
I'll just start discussion. Because I do recall asking Elizabeth Fisher if we had any minimum amount of time that we could go under contract. She said no, which appealed to me. I don't know if 1 year is enough time to test this out, to see if it's efficacious, but I like not being locked into it. I would like to make a motion that this committee recommend to council that we contract with Fisher Glass Recycling for a year.
Before we go to a motion, I had one item I wanted to bring up about this, and it's,
Well, discussion.
Yeah, generally, a motion's made, second, and that opens it up for discussion. So any second,
Second it.
so now, ready for
oh,
discussion?
we don't have to go right to vote, okay.
No,
Okay, okay, so this comes out of my experience being in the waste cleanup business. My only concern is that they're gonna take our bottles and cans and whatever. Suppose
Just
glass.
glass,
Just
but
glass.
just suppose they get overrun, and are we liable for them? Like, there should be a clause in the contract that protects us from any future liability, that when they take them, they're no longer ours. Because when you get into dealing with waste and things, I mean, that
that
class,
she kind of, or that they come back and say, hey, we were unsuccessful, but we have a holding yard full of your
that's
8
what she
months of
said she
glass.
has, yeah, but I mean, it came from us. Is there any liability? I think the county, we might want to have the city attorney to just look at that. Because, that's happened in cases where, you hear about recycling and then you hear that they're dumping them in the backyard because the landfill or somebody won't take them anymore. I just think we might want to make sure that there's no long-term potential liability if for some reason, I'm not saying the Fishers are bad actors. I'm just saying, again, human behavior, things go to make sure that there is no liability with how that glass is being handled, because if they're taking it from us, the easiest thing is just they sign a waiver that says they own it, it's their responsibility now. I doubt that they're a small company, they're working in a more community service orientation certainly, but we just should watch our liability, that's
I
all.
think that's,
I
I
think
hate to be
they,
a stick in the mud.
I
but-
think they have contracts with other cities. Did Emily mention that?
she indicated to us that we would be the first in the low country.
First
to
in the
do-
low country. My understanding is that there are others outside the low country.
Maybe, yeah,
That
maybe.
they already have a contract with. I mean, we could ask to see what that
Yeah,
contract.
I mean, I have no objection to the program. I think it's a great idea. Just let's, my advice coming in from being in the waste cleanup business and seeing a lot of Superfund and clean. Let's just make sure that there is no concern by the attorneys about liability associated with the waste leaving and us maybe not knowing what its ultimate destination is. I don't know if other recycling programs have those clauses in the contracts, but there's got.
Well, we can certainly verify that. I think that's an excellent point. I guess similar vein, it did seem to me as though there was a current plan for the glass to go to Beaufort. There's a demand by this person in Beaufort or group in Beaufort for countertops. I guess I wondered if that were to go away, the guy in Beaufort no longer wants it. Are we,
Exactly.
or that's the current plan? I mean, imagine if the new plan was it goes to the county and we're paying for it. I don't know. I guess I don't know how it would work. If the city, or if there's a responsibility of the city to kind of keep track of exactly what's happening to it. So we felt good about it. Because it seems as though the group and the council at Tuesday night's meeting felt good about that. And
I'm not so worried. I mean, right now, we're giving our glass to Charleston County that uses it for landfill. I like the idea of protecting the city through the contract, and especially if it's just for 1 year, to keep an eye on it. But my way of thinking is this is a move in the right direction
Mhm.
environmentally,
Yes.
and it beats filling up our recycle bins with glass that's going to be dumped in a landfill. And my goodness, look at all the beer bottles and wine bottles that we generate in this community during season, high season in particular. So that's why I made the motion, because I would like to see us try something that we're not doing now. I don't want to lock into a 3-year contract because of the concerns, but I think 1 year would give us some good experience. before
And
we
maybe
do
the
it.
year is the point. Maybe that's the checkpoint, you know, last year, 1 year ago, we understood it's going to Beaufort to be countertops. What's happening
Yeah.
to it now? Is it still the same arrangement? Is it something different?
One thing the Fisher showed me is that they're working with some companies on developing a system of taking recycled glass and using it for seawalls and building material, which is very cool, very exciting. And if that moves along, that'd be a wonderful place for a glass.
Yeah.
They've been making countertops a long time.
Yeah, they've been
because
making countertops. I mean, they sell
like,
countertops.
since
You can see them around town.
2008, I know
Yeah.
for sure they've
Yeah.
been doing it at least that long, because I
From
looked at them.
Beaufort, the Beaufort group or the,
No, the
with
one, the Charleston group, because I went and visited their facility and looked at their countertops and things like that. So that was about 2008. So they seem to have a pretty good product. I think maybe they have somebody in Beaufort who's buying a lot of their product at this point, but I have confidence that they are a good company.
and there's gonna be, if it pivots to a different company, it will be a responsible, good use of the
Yeah,
glass.
I mean, if you
think
if you look at where we've come, you know, this is the future of what we want with waste. We want waste to be put back into a circular economy. So if we're taking this and they're putting it into countertops or jewelry, it's going back into the economy. It's being used, it's being handled well. So this also moves us, I think, Isle of Palms into we're looking at the future. And we could actually look at this as one example. If this is successful, what other waste could we segregate and find a market for?
Yeah.
And so I think this could also be a pilot on that whole concept of trying to build that circular economy around our waste streams.
Right, and glass is extremely recyclable. I mean, plastic breaks down. You can't actually reconstitute it as much as you would like, but glass is just a great opportunity.
Yeah.
One
but
of my favorite shoe brands is actually recycled glass. If anybody's interested, in
No kidding.
coffees,
Have
and
you ever-
they're
Yeah.
washable.
Have you ever cut your foot? No, I'm kidding.
No,
Not yet.
No, I think
So-
it's great. I just, like I said, just as we're in this transition from the old treatment and disposal to recycling and circular economy, let's just make sure that if the lawyers don't think there's any liability, great, but let's let them just do a quick checkbox, check on it.
My only question is about the economic part of it, because the plans are going on a grant, and I believe Elizabeth emailed this past week saying that she could take the lead on pursuing grants. I mean, do we just move forward with it and then have Faithful find the grants? Is that?
That's,
That's a city council.
Yeah.
issue.
that would be,
We don't have the ability to make.
Right, but when city
that
council
the
sees it, do they
program?
see like, oh, we might have to spend $9,000, or do they see it as?
to me personally, and it will be a decision of council, but I think that even if the grants were unsuccessful, that it would be a program that they would want to do. And I would expect that there wouldn't be a lot of pushback if it's, worst case scenario, we don't get grants, we paid the $9,600. I feel like everybody would be okay with that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let the council, I mean, there's,
I think it go forward as a proposal to use for $9,000.
Okay.
that's
Okay.
typically these types of projects, I've seen it that way, where if there is a grant to apply for, if it's a good use of the money and it's not a significant amount that's in the budget, go forward, but we're going to ask you to please try to recoup with a grant if it's available.
Yeah.
And then we could make that contingent to the Fishers to go ahead and apply for the grant, ask them to do that. Not that it's contingent, but that's going to be up to the city council, but I think this is a good thing to move forward with.
Any further discussion on the motion?
One more point that I don't think was in the minutes either, in communications with Palmetto Pride about this and another issue. Sarah Lyles, the executive director, was very positive with her experience at the state level with Fisher Recycling. She
Good.
gave them a good good recommendation. Do you remember anything else about that email? But anyway, I think that's good to have a thumbs up from a respected community organization.
Good to know.
Cool.
So all in favor of the motion to recommend to city council that they consider the Fisher recycling for the glass.
Aye.
For a 1 year, for 1 year.
1 year,
For one-
and with the caveat that we're verified to not have any liability for once the.
Yes,
I like
with that caveat, this is a motion, we second the motion, now to vote.
We've already done that and
Yes.
had discussion, so now we vote,
Very good.
right?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a little Robert's rules issues today.
Okay, water
Excellent.
quality
Oh,
update.
can I mention one thing about litter? I just had a question for Douglas about the butt canisters and if you have any information regarding how that's going. I was just curious.
So we've had, and I think since we've met. So Robert Acero is the Public Works employee who's been kind of shepherding that project through. He's installed additional ones down at the county, at the city dock at the marina. From what and there are key locations that have no smoking signs. And there are cigarette butts all around there because people are smoking, they come up to it, they want to go down the facility and they throw it down. He's reporting back that they are being used, that the canisters are being used. I don't think we're getting kind of volume, calculations on how many, but they're certainly being used. They're being emptied. I get the sense I keep an eye on the marina one. I do think over time, the number of butts on the ground adjacent to that dock is reducing over time. So
Okay,
I think it's useful.
Sorry, did you say that we are not measuring the amount of?
No, no, at this point, it's an employee is just unlocking the bottom of it. It's emptying
Empty.
into the trash
Mhm.
container and they're.
Yeah.
Okay,
going
well,
on.
one thought I have is that seeing as that was one of the first things the committee did, having some data to be able to point to as a success would be nice
Yeah.
for us as a committee. Is there any easy way to?
Yeah, that's what I wouldn't,
I don't want to make it
Even if,
complicated.
could he take a picture?
well, I guess I'm wondering if kind of a weekly, if he has a bucket,
It doesn't have to be exact either.
Yeah, just
you
kind of-
know, Like 5-gallon bucket.
a 5-gallon bucket is a quarter full.
6 times a month or something like that. Be helpful.
Yeah, let me talk to
Yeah.
Robert about just a ballpark guess of how much it is.
Yeah, not
There-
onerous.
Yeah, I was interested because in asking the question, because I was with someone and we were down at the front beach area and I saw one of the butt containers, but it doesn't have any signage with it except the Isle of Palm signs. It doesn't have any of like the surf rider signs that we had looked at. And the person that was with me said, "What is that?" So I was just wondering if people were even knowledgeable about what it was and what it was used for, because it may not be real apparent right at first. So is there any possibility of including some of those, the surf rider signs, not maybe on everyone, but on a couple
Maybe
of key
stickers Would be
locations?
good to put around the canister so that they would. be
So that
like-
people recognize
Yeah,
that that
no,
is a
we
butt
can make
canister,
sure
because
that-
I don't
Those
know.
are
if-
kind of slick, black
It's a slick,
cans
yeah, and
without any,
yeah, and you don't really, there's a little cigarette emblem on top, but
yeah.
it's a little bit hard to see. So
Okay, we did reach out to them. To get this part, and we did not have a program, can't get. To do that, we didn't feel like right when they just with their information on it. they approved.
so you had trouble getting in touch with them?
Yeah, so if they are okay with us putting those small funds up, because I called the fund to Creek.
Uh-huh.
Picture, this is what we could do, all of those. We haven't, and I didn't want to go and sign it and have one made, like copyright or something. So,
Right.
We did order, and I thought public found that they could do all stickers.
Uh-huh.
If someone can get us in touch with-
Do you want me to see if I can reach out to my contact with Surfrider and talk to her about the fact that we have asked for the signage and have had trouble getting that?
And if they can.
Okay. Okay,
I just said it.
7.
And I'd like to say, if you go with stickers, make sure they're treated for UV fading, because I have had to replace the stickers on the monofilament recycling bin on the Sea Cabins Pier many times because they were not UV and then they just turn white and then nobody knows what it is.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't realize that you guys had tried and not been successful.
I didn't know
getting
that
in touch
either. If
with
it
them.
has to do with a sign, I'm telling you, she's on, she is on.
Amy's on it. Thank you, Amy.
Right. Are we ready for update on drainage master plan?
Yes, so this is a project that the city has hired Davis and Floyd, local engineering firm. They are doing, they're developing plans for a few key drainage projects, which will be important to the city, but probably more important to this group is they are looking at our standards, at our development standards with an eye primarily on water quantity, running water, running too much water off of your site. But they will also kind of include an eye for water quality. But like I said, it primarily will be focused on water quantity. But I do know that they're in the middle of that research now. They've that kind of had a schedule that they're adhering to, and this part of their project is now coming in on reviewing our standards, looking at some case studies. They have identified at least 2 properties, key properties that are having problems. Looking at, how they were handled, what the code said about those, what could have been improved. So I feel positive that that will be a good outcome for the community once they've developed some standards, and we will bring those to you all to look at.
So when you're
before-
talking about key properties, can you talk a little bit more about that? Those are,
So one is just where they are.
okay.
So one is on Carolina Boulevard,
Okay.
had a house built next to them. They felt like the standards basically let them down. It's a case where, well, in both of these, there was a development of a property nearby that the adjacent owner felt like the standards basically failed them. And so they're analyzing exactly kind of what happened and what triggers could have been in place that would have kept those problems from happening. So one is in the breach inlet into the island. The other one is more in the center, kind of 24th Avenue, around that vicinity. But slightly different situations, but kind of the same outcome where people felt like they didn't have problems before that happened, and now they do.
I think this is a bit of a unique opportunity. I always believe this, that if you can get to your ordinances and standards and modernize those to reflect best practice for what you're trying to do. In this case, it's water quantity, but if they could work in water quality as well, that's really can have a major effect on build out and what happens in the future, more so than the punitive regulations of, digging a hole, something like that.
Right.
So if we could, it would be nice if we could get an I can do this offline too. I'd like to get a better understanding of what their scope is and how far it's going to go, but it's also a very sensitive issue, and the council is going to be sensitive
Right.
because it affects property value, property rights, and a lot of things. But being on a land use planning board, I would say that I think sometimes we give the people who are developing land more rights than the people around them, just because they have they're willing to rattle the tree a little bit, or shake the tree a little bit more. But there's also good opportunity here to maybe update our standards to bring in some more other new modern technologies that can help reduce quality and improve quality and reduce quantity. So this could be quite an interesting opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess related to this with the water group, we have been trying to set a meeting with Charleston County, their stormwater folks that deal with, and they deal more with water quality and the construction side of things. We have been trying to set a meeting. For whatever reason, it's been challenging to set. But hopefully we will get some direction through our contacts with that group and others on getting a handle on if we have a water quality problem. And as you will recall, there was money put in this year's budget
Mhm.
to do some of that. I think we've anticipated it would be testing, that we would kind of start testing some key locations for water quality issues. Just getting a hard time getting the county to sit down with us, but we'll continue to work to make that happen. And hopefully by next month, we'll have something more to report on that initiative.
I mean, one of the best things we can do for overall water quality is get everybody off septics and get everybody on the wastewater treatment plant. And the only way we're going to do that is if we provide some sort of funding mechanism, low interest financing mechanism, which I'm sure has been through discussion for the last 20 years here.
And definitely the Water and Sewer Commission's got an eye on there's a lot of grant opportunities right now, and they're trying to, the barrier to sewering the island is always the cost.
Mhm.
There happens to be infrastructure money available for wastewater
Yeah,
grants. So
Yeah, the recent,
hopefully we can
the
get
recent bipartisan infrastructure laws let up a lot of money for
Right.
available to state revolving funds, and that trickles down. So there could be quite a bit of money
right.
that's out there.
We're all vying for it
Yep.
at the same time. It's like a
Yep.
feeding frenzy. That's all I have on
Right.
water.
Under miscellaneous business, I'd like to bring up something that we might want to think about in the future. Desiree, our city administrator, told me that Palmetto Pride has grants for something called Water Goat, GOAT. I don't know why it's called that. Greatest of all.
Kidding?
Anyway, she seemed to believe that the city of Isle of Palms, and what these are basically, I'm not sure I can explain it, but they are methods of collecting litter that is flowing downstream. And she seemed to believe that there are places on the Isle of Palms where these devices could be utilized. And I think it's something we could look into in future months, at future meetings, and see whether that might be a
It's a
good
system
thing.
placed around, it's like what they do with oil spills. You put
Entrapment.
Right.
Yeah.
You're trying to contain it, and then
Yeah.
the question is, how do you get it off? But that's actually the goat. There used to be these things called billy goats that used to,
Ah,
they
that's
used
why
to
they
use
call
them
it
in an
that.
amusement park to clean it up. But it was a way of collecting litter. So
Uh-huh.
maybe that's why it's a
And
goat.
that's what it is here.
But yeah, that's a
And
good
I don't
idea.
know where on the Isle of Palms this would be utilized, maybe creeks in the back and stuff like that, certainly not in the ocean. But anyway, I just wanted to introduce that concept and
That's great.
maybe put it on a future agenda.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
Well, I mean, that's again, could be something that's worked into the work that's being done in the drainage. Could we? Right.
I didn't know what they came into drainage
Probably,
or litter.
yeah,
or
probably
what.
litter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Anyway,
okay. It's one of those cross-functional.
anything else you want to say about water goats? No?
Sorry, I had to step up for work call. I missed the Fisher thing that passed, which is great. I just was wondering, in the proposal, they had proposed, I think, 2 locations for pickups. I think one around the fire station by the marina and one maybe around Harris Teeter or something. Is that definitely going to, is it that what it would be? Is that what it's going to go with, or would that be up for further discussion or?
I think we're
Way
open
to
for
optimize.
discussions.
Okay.
I think we felt like it needed to be on city property, so we would. I guess I anticipated that it would be probably the large municipal lot at the front beach.
Okay. I think that's a good idea.
And but if the Harris Teeter were agreeable to having it there,
I was just
If
trying
you
to
think
think
that's a
between-
better location.
I think municipal lot might make sense. I was just trying to think about, are you trying to optimize resident recycling only or visitor recycling in the summer months when they're coming in? I'm not sure where's the best place, if Harris Teeter or the municipal lot would be better to capture the tourist traffic during the summer months versus islanders who are gonna be recycling.
Is that something our committee would be deciding, or would that
You
be a
could.
council?
No, I mean, if
Decision.
you will have a recommendation,
Yeah.
I think
I think Harris Teeter has got
Harris
to be
Teeter's
one
better.
of the points because even tourists visit Harris Teeter once during the week and I think.
I do have to step away. So.
I don't-
yeah, thank you, Joe.
I just wasn't sure if they were visiting Harris Teeter on their way out or their way in. I think they're visiting on their way in, not necessarily once their glass bottles are empty on the way out. I don't know.
But it's close to the connector.
And they would have seen it, I guess. Where I guess the fear would be that they never even saw the front beach parking lot because they never, if you didn't go in, you might
Yeah.
not see it.
Seen in
If you
Wild
were
Dudes or
renting, that
something.
wouldn't have anything to do with the parking lot.
Harris Teeter, everybody like that? If we can,
Mhm.
if they're agreeable,
And,
Sure.
and the marina as well.
and the marina.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, I think they put in the proposal about I don't know if it's the marina or the fire department.
it would
or-
be, and there
But
is.
this-
But
Like before
that
first.
That
area.
area,
Yeah.
That would probably get to some of the Wild Dunes folks. That marina area, people are having, glass from their boats or whatever.
Right. Any other business?
Sorry.
Oh, sure. So I sorry for missing last meeting. I believe that it was reported that the climate change resolution did not successfully go through as we proposed it to council. And my inclination was to table it for now because there's no rush and because part of the idea behind the resolution is coming out strong. I didn't want to dilute it in a few key ways. One thing that occurred to me that could be a path forward is trying to do a presentation for city council on climate science and then make the Q&A so there can be discussion with folks. If they're skeptical of certain aspects of climate science, talking that through would be a nice next step to get them on board for future climate action. That would be basically an education proposal from our committee, and we haven't done that before. But how do y'all think we could best proceed in trying to get council to sit down with? I could put together the presentation. I'd be happy for myself or someone with my group, the Charleston Climate Coalition, to do the presentation and Q&A. But my question is how to best invite council to that and set it up. Workshop.
At the council workshop.
Okay.
That's where they were.
Yeah, that, I don't know if anybody saw it, but we had a College of Charleston professor there on the economics of, hey,
I was there.
Jonathan
Yeah.
was it? On the economics of short-term rentals,
Okay.
kind of towards the front of the agenda. I think it went well, was kind of an enjoyable part of the agenda, maybe similar type arrangement.
Sure.
That's a good idea.
Belvin, maybe next month we put it on the agenda and just talk about the timing and kind of how, how that would kind of talk about it in a little more detail as to how that would go.
Sure.
One last thing I wanted to ask about at that workshop, I know Councilman Popson mentioned potentially the building getting painted when you come off the connector, and I feel like that was something we discussed as well. And I can't remember if there was I don't remember what happened with that, if there was somebody that was going to proposing a mural or design.
That was something the garden club wanted to do as part of their many projects.
Okay,
Ironically,
so there's interest.
that building was just painted. And all of the bamboo was intentionally removed to kind of, less, to have less kind of, yeah. So we may have differences of aesthetics, I think is what's going on. But,
Yeah.
I do remember, I think the mural idea was talked about
Bobby Berg.
but I think it's out of this committee, I think.
Yeah, I like the way it looks now.
It's the clean versus
Yeah.
the woody, I think.
And
Depending,
do
it's
we
a-
want to distract people as they're coming down to the red light? Are they gonna be looking at the building instead? of the
Robert is
traffic light?
very clean and tidy. The public works kind of guy is very, that's his aesthetic.
Okay, I'll leave it alone. I don't want to get into that.
Those were-
Only other thing that I have is there is, and I don't think we talked about it last month, but their council has adopted a code of conduct for themselves, and it does apply to all city commissions and boards and committees. So I will put that on a future agenda, just to have, it's not that any real committee doesn't strictly adhere to a proper code of conduct, but it is a new thing that we should talk about, and you should have received it. So I'll do that for your next meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion that we
I
adjourn?
move the meeting be adjourned.
Is there a second?
Then
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.